When the pushing stopped, no one celebrated. There was no moment of relief, no visible turning point you could circle on a calendar. The aggression simply ended, and in the days that followed, something quieter began to happen. Something the cameras barely caught at first. Punch moved differently. He stayed closer to the edges of the enclosure. He watched longer before approaching food. He didn't run anymore, but he didn't relax either. This wasn't the story of a rescue. This was the story of recalibration. And the question no one seemed to be asking was simple. How long would it hold? For weeks, Punch had been the target. Shoves in the feeding area, isolation during grooming sessions, the kind of social rejection that, in a troop of Japanese macaques, doesn't need to be loud to be devastating. He'd spent entire afternoons pressed into corners, clutching the plush orangutan toy that had become his only constant. The other monkeys didn't need to touch him to keep him away. Distance was the message, and Punch learned it fast. But then, in early March, the dynamic shifted. Reports from the zoo suggested that certain aggressive individuals were removed from the troop, though the exact timeline and reasoning were never made fully public. What we do know is this: the physical confrontations stopped. The chasing ended. Punch was no longer being actively pushed out of shared spaces. On paper, that sounds like progress, maybe even like safety, but here's what people missed in those first few days of calm. Safety and acceptance are not the same thing. In the footage released by Ichikawa City Zoo, you can see it if you know where to look. Punch no longer flinches when other macaques pass by. He doesn't scramble to the far corner at the first sign of movement. That's the visible change, the one the zoo highlighted in their video. But watch his positioning. He's still on the periphery, still the last to approach when food is distributed, still hesitant at thresholds, doorways, platforms, shaded areas where the troop tends to gather. He's not being excluded anymore, but he's not being invited either. He exists in a kind of social no man's land, tolerated, but not integrated. Calmer, yes, but not settled. And that's where the fragility starts to show. Because in macaque troops, hierarchy is never static. It shifts with age, with alliances, with the introduction or removal of individuals. Punch's current calm isn't built on his own social strength. It's built on the absence of his aggressors. Remove the threat and behavior changes. But that doesn't mean trust is rebuilt. It doesn't mean his position is secure. What happens when the troop's dynamics shift again? When a new alpha asserts dominance? When younger macaques begin testing boundaries? Punch has learned to navigate a temporary equilibrium. But equilibrium, by definition, doesn't last. There's a moment in the zoo's footage, brief, easy to miss, where Punch approaches a cluster of macaques near the water feature. He moves slowly, stops several body lengths away, watches. One of the older females glances at him. No aggression, no threat display, just acknowledgement. Punch doesn't move closer. He stays where he is, at that exact distance, for nearly a minute. Then he turns and walks back toward the edge of the enclosure. To the untrained eye, this looks like a non-event. But to anyone studying social reintegration in primates, it's a signal. Punch is testing proximity, and the troop is allowing it, but only at a distance. He's learning the new rules. The boundaries are invisible now, but they're still there. This is what recovery looks like in real time. Not a switch that flips from afraid to safe. Not a Disney arc where the outcast gets welcomed back with open arms. It's incremental. It's conditional. And it's built on a foundation that could crack the moment the social landscape shifts. Punch isn't celebrating his newfound calm. He's navigating it, day by day, interaction by interaction, and every choice he makes, where to sit, when to approach, how long to stay, is informed by weeks of learned avoidance. You don't unlearn that overnight. The zoo's video framed this as a victory, and in many ways, it is. The physical aggression has stopped. Punch is no longer in immediate danger. His stress markers, based on keeper observations, appear to have decreased. He's eating more regularly. He's spending less time in isolated corners. These are measurable improvements, and they matter. But here's the part the video didn't explore. What happens next? What happens when the novelty of this new dynamic wears off? When the troop stops being cautious and starts testing him again? Punch's current state isn't the end of the story. It's the middle, and middles are precarious. There's a behavioral term in primate studies, social debt. It refers to the cumulative effect of negative interactions within a troop. Even after aggression stops, the memory of it remains. Macaques have long memories for social hierarchy. They remember who dominated them, who displaced them, who excluded them from grooming circles. Punch may be calmer now, but the troop still remembers who he was in the hierarchy just weeks ago, and unless something fundamentally changes, Unless Punch finds an ally, builds a bond, earns a place beyond mere tolerance, he'll remain in that same psychological position, the one who was pushed out, the one who doesn't quite belong. In the days following the aggression's end, keepers reportedly observed Punch spending more time near Momo-chan, one of the younger females in the troupe. She didn't initiate grooming, but she didn't move away when he sat nearby. That proximity, small as it is, might be the foundation Punch needs. In macaque troops, alliances are everything. A single bond can shift an individual's entire social standing. If Punch can build even one reliable connection, his position stabilizes. If he can't, he remains vulnerable to the next shift in dominance, the next reshuffling of alliances, the next young male looking to prove himself. And that's the tension running through every frame of the zoo's footage. Yes, Punch looks calmer. Yes, the immediate threat has been removed. But calm is not the same as secure. Tolerance is not the same as belonging. And in a social structure as complex as a macaque troop, the absence of violence doesn't guarantee the presence of safety. It just means the violence has paused. So what does this mean for Punch moving forward? It means every day is a negotiation. Every interaction is a test. He's learning to exist in a troop that no longer actively rejects him, but hasn't fully accepted him either. He's rebuilding proximity tolerance, relearning social cues, recalibrating his sense of where he fits. And all of this is happening under the weight of a social memory that doesn't forget. The troop knows who he is. He knows who he is. And until something changes that dynamic, an alliance, a bond, a shift in hierarchy that works in his favor, he'll remain in this in-between space. Calmer, yes. Safer, maybe. But not settled. The zoo's video ended on a hopeful note. Punch sitting quietly near the group. No confrontation, no isolation, just presence. And for many viewers, that was enough. The bullying stopped, so the story must have a happy ending. But stories don't end just because the conflict pauses. They end when the tension resolves. And Punch's tension, the question of whether he'll ever truly belong in this troupe, is still very much unresolved. Because here's what we know about social reintegration in primates. It's slow, it's non-linear, and it's entirely dependent on factors outside the individual's control. Punch can do everything right, stay calm, respect boundaries, avoid conflict, and still remain on the margins if the troupe doesn't shift its perception of him. His fate isn't just in his hands, it's in theirs. And that's what makes this moment so fragile. In the coming weeks, we'll see whether this calm holds, whether Punch continues to edge closer to the troupe, or whether he retreats back into learned avoidance. Whether Momo-chan's proximity becomes something more, or whether it fades into the same tolerant distance every other macaque maintains with him. We'll see if new aggression emerges, different faces, same dynamics, or if the troupe allows him to slowly, quietly, claim a more stable place within their structure. Right now, Punch exists in a rare moment. The aggression has stopped, but the integration hasn't solidified. He's suspended between exclusion and acceptance, between threat and trust. And the outcome isn't guaranteed. It never is. Not for macaques rejected at birth, not for individuals rebuilding their place in a hierarchy that once pushed them out. The only certainty is this: the story isn't over. It's just shifted into a quieter, more uncertain phase. And that phase, the one where nothing dramatic happens, but everything is at stake, might be the most important one of all. Tomorrow, the keepers will watch, the cameras will record, and Punch will continue testing the boundaries of a troupe that no longer hurts him, but hasn't decided if he belongs. That decision, when it comes, won't happen in a single moment. It'll happen in 100 small interactions, 1,000 quiet choices, and we'll be watching every one of them. If you want to see what happens next, if you want to know whether this calm becomes something more or slips back into something worse, subscribe and turn on notifications, because Punch's story is still being written. And the next chapter starts tomorrow.